I can see tears. I see a choice of love or fear. What do you choose? I can see peace, or I can see war. I can see sunshine, or I can see a storm. What do you choose? I choose to love where freedom flies from my heart, where the light keeps shining, and I choose to feel the heart.
All right, that's a bummer. Yeah.
I choose love. I choose
I can't hear you. I don't know what you just said.
I can see sharing, or I can see greed. I can see caring, or poverty. What do you choose? I can see gardens, or I can see bones. I can see life.
What did you say?
Coming on strong. So what do you choose? I choose to love with freedom flies from my heart, where the light keeps shining, and I choose to feel the whole world cover the strength.
Hi, everybody. This is Barbara Three Crow live with Unraveling the Mystery. It's March 29th, nearly the end of March. April's right around the corner. Finally, our 2 feet plus of snow is pretty much gone. Yay! Happy about that. I've been reading the Sounding the Shofar, and this is basically why I wanted to do this show. I said to Patty that I found something that I thought was very crucial and of interest and deep, and I like to, as a researcher and someone who's looking to find the truth. After all, we have so many cover-ups and lies going so far back in our history. So when I find something, I want to look into it, and I felt that was really an interesting read, Betty Rhodes, and it's about the lost tribes, and also about peace, and just quickly here about the Jews have to get their act together in order for peace to actually unfold in our time, because she says that everything that happens there in that part of the world involves the rest of the world. And now today I'm going to start with, before I get into Sounding the Shofar, I'm going to start with this other piece that actually segues into Sounding the Shofar and the information that she's giving us. And this is called, by Dr. Lorraine Day, God Created the Destroyer to Destroy. And as I said, this is, I feel, and we've been talking about this, that right from the beginning there have been manipulations, lies, and cover-ups. And I think some of what I'm going to read today is very new to me. Some of it I already do know, and you all might feel the same. There might be some things that you say, oh yeah, I did know about that, or I have read about that, and others you may say, wow, I had no clue. And this is going to pique your interest, and it's also maybe going to spin a little bit here. because this is very complex information about our history and manipulations that are going on that are leading us today where we are headed. And that's why I wanted to start out with this. So stick with me and we'll see where this goes. This is God created the destroyer to destroy. So the scriptures say that Satan, the adversary, was a sinner and murderer from the beginning. The question is, from the beginning of what? The adversary, Satan, is sinning from the beginning. This is spoken of in John 3:8. Yeshua himself said Satan, the devil, was a murderer from the beginning and is not only a liar, but the father of it. Let's look at the passages that have a bearing on Satan's origin. We will be accurate as long as we keep the titles given to him in the scriptures: serpent, adversary, and Satan. In other words, the word Lucifer is not in the Bible. Okay, the Bible never refers to Satan as Lucifer. The word Lucifer has been erroneously written into the Bible in Isaiah 14:12 by the translators, knowingly and purposely. The word translated Lucifer is actually the Hebrew word for howl or wail, like H-O-W-L, or wail, wailing, or W-A-I-L, meaning to cry out. Every other time that same Hebrew word is used in the Old Testament, it is always translated as howl or wail. The Hebrew word appears 27 times in the Old Testament. 26 times it is translated as howl or wail, and only one time it is translated as Lucifer. I hope that you find that curious and worthy of your continued investigation. Now please note, the Freemasons at the highest level admit their God is Lucifer. And also I'm going to add the Illuminatis as well. Yes, Lucifer is God. The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the high degrees maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. And that was spoken by General Albert Pike, a 33rd degree Mason, Sovereign Grand Commander of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, USA. And eventually, the New World Order will demand that everyone in the world must worship Lucifer, or they will be killed. And Patty and I last month found a really amazing link that we were talking about, and this was also noted in that. We were talking about Lucifer, the Antichrist, and the false prophet, and so on. And that was a discussion about the Bible and the Islam. Okay, so now the origin of Satan. What does the Bible say about who brought the serpent into existence? His hand hath formed the crooked serpent. This was in Job 26:13. Job states that God's hand formed the serpent, and God said Job spoke of God what is right. If these were the words of one of Job's friends, lest it be merely human philosophy. For the Lord said to Job's friends, you have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job has. God himself takes credit for the creation of Satan as Satan. And I think I'm clear on that. I don't know, at least I have been clear that God created everything, created all creation. He must have created this Satan. I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy. God said, I have created the waster, the destroyer, to destroy. Can it be any clearer? God created Satan and named him Satan, the adversary, to be just that, the adversary against God. His job is to test us to see if we will stand for God through difficult trials and tribulations. Even though Satan wants to rule the world, and in fact probably the universe, even though Satan wants to stand in the place of God, he is still under God's complete control. He can only do what God allows, as the story in Job chapters 1 and 2 confirms. From where did sin come? Many will say sin began with Adam, but Satan was sinning long before he tempted Adam and Eve. Satan, the adversary, and Adam are both created creatures and as such originated nothing. We only condemn ourselves as theological evolutionists when we trace sin back to a creature and refuse to acknowledge the Creator. The adversary was a sinner from the beginning. If we agree that God created Satan as such, the crucial question arises, did God sin in creating the adversary? Now, the answer will depend entirely upon the object God had in view. Was it God's intention that sin should invade the universe, or was it due to an error on his part? And you know, I had an argument with somebody about this. Well, not an argument. It was sort of a conversation that was a little deep and heavy, and wasn't a disagreement. It was a heavy conversation because this person said that God made the mistake and didn't realize his mistake. And I said, well, I don't think the Creator would not know, since God, Creator, is omniscient. So that was our little disagreement there. I think that God's intention was very clear. I don't think, that's my perception. So the definition of sin is, in quotes, a mistake. In other words, like missing the mark. All have sinned and come short of the glory of Creator or creation. If sin's entrance was a mistake, then God sinned. If God created Satan perfect and his defection was a surprise and a disappointment to God, then there is no use in hiding behind mere words. God failed. He started out to make a flawless creature who turned out bad. There is no one else to charge with this failure but God. But this is all wrong, for God never fails or sins. Now, sin has an essential, though transient, part in God's purpose. God made preparation for it before it came. The Lamb was slain from the foundation, disruption of the world. There can be no Savior apart from sin. There can be no reconciliation apart from enmity. God locks all up together in stubbornness, that he should be merciful to all. Satan is the adversary of God. The name Satan means adversary. Satan was created to be the adversary of God. And the Bible tells us that God and Satan have their own respective peoples. God's people are those who keep the commandments and have the faith of Yeshua. Where does the Bible tell us who Satan's people are? When Yeshua spoke to the Pharisees, he said, "You are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and stands not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of it." Yeshua also strongly rebuked the Pharisees because they kept their own traditions rather than keeping the commandments of God. But he answered and said unto them, "Why do you also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? You have made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. You hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, This people draws near unto me with their mouth, and honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. What were these horrible, unbiblical traditions, these doctrines of men, that the Pharisees were teaching? The traditions that Jesus or Yeshua strongly rebuked as heresies? Well, they were the oral traditions of the Pharisees that were later written down after they murdered Christ. And those traditions became the Talmud, the holiest book of present-day Judaism. Judaism began after the Jews murdered Christ, after the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, after the abolishing of the temple priesthood, and after the oral traditions were committed to writing in book form that became known as the Talmud. Today, that same Talmud governs the cultural and religious life of the Jews. And Yeshua identified those who followed the traditions of the Pharisees, which later became the Talmud, as the children of Satan, because they were the cultural and spiritual offspring of the destroyer. They were doing the work of their father, the devil, because they destroyed Yeshua. They became the destroyers of the way, of the truth, and the life. And thus they became destroyers of everything good in the world. The destroyers of the world today are the same group, the ones whose culture and or religion originates in the Talmud. What is the Talmud? Now I'm just feeling an energy here right now in this moment, and I just want to say, because she says it a little later on here in the read, but I'm going to say it now. Stick with this, because this goes into very important information regarding where we are today, and uncovers a lot of important things that may have been covered up to many of us. As I said before, some of us are familiar with it. But she says that this is not about anti-Semitism, and she explains why that is, and who the real Jewish people are, and who are the false. I've had this before, so just stick with me here on this. So what is the Talmud? The Talmud is a vast collection of Jewish man-made laws and traditions. The Talmud is Judaism's holiest book. Evidence of this is found in the Talmud itself, in Erubin 21b, the Sonsino edition, says, My son, be more careful in the observance of the words of the scribes than in the words of the Torah, which is the Old Testament. The holiest book of the religions of Judaism is not the Old Testament. That is used by the Jews only as a relic, which the rabbis parade through the synagogue, but it is never studied or followed. The Talmud nullifies the Bible by permitting and encouraging virtually everything the Bible defines as sin. While on earth, Yeshua made a direct reference to the Talmud when he denounced the Pharisees, the leaders of the synagogue, for voiding the scripture by teaching the traditions of men. The Talmud governs not only the Orthodox religion of Judaism, but it also governs the life and the culture of the non-religious Jews, whether an individual Jew knows it or not, because the Talmudic philosophy states, We, the Jews, are better than all other peoples. We have a right to take what we want from others. We have a right to cheat and lie and steal from others, and to rule over all the peoples of the world. Non-Jews, derogatorily referred to as Goyim or heathens or Gentiles by the Jews, are considered to be no better than cattle, according to the Talmud, so their possessions, their land, and even their lives can be taken at will. The teachings of the Jewish Babylonian Talmud are arguably the most bigoted, despicable, and hate-filled teachings known to man. Keep in mind that they have a sanitized version available for non-Jews. And before I hear a lot of wailing of anti-Semite from Jews and others, I suggest you investigate thoroughly for yourself what the Talmud says. Jews have no right to point the finger at anyone else for bigotry while they humiliate, mutilate, and assassinate the Palestinians, and while the Jews hold as holy a book, the Talmud, that denigrates all non-Jews as beasts. I have a number of Jewish friends who happen to be wonderful people. I am not against Jews in general, but I am against anyone, Asian, Jew, white, black, or brown, who thinks that he or she is better than others because of his own or her own culture, race, or social standing. I am also against anyone or any group who says, "Never forget," which is a totally anti-God and hateful slogan that will eventually cause that individual or culture to destroy itself. In other words, when you hold on to anger, eventually that destroys the person, a group who is holding that anger. They will reap what they have sown. And here are just a few of the hateful statements that are actually in the Talmud. Okay. Some teachings of the Jewish Talmud where a Jew should do evil. In other words, this is where it is allowed. If a Jew is tempted to do evil, he should go to a city where he is not known and do the evil there. And here's a penalty for disobeying rabbis. Whosoever disobeys the rabbis deserves death and will be punished by being boiled in hot excrement in hell. And hitting a Jew is the same as hitting God. If a heathen, a Gentile, hits a Jew, that Gentile must be killed. And here's another one. A Jew need not pay a Gentile the wages owed him for work. Here's another one. If an ox of an Israelite gores an ox of a Canaanite, there is no liability. But if an ox of a Canaanite gores an ox of an Israelite, the payment is to be in full. Now these are laws in the Talmud. And this is about if a Jew finds an object lost by a Gentile, which in parentheses is known as a heathen, it does not have to be returned. God will not spare a Jew who marries his daughter to an old man or takes a wife for his infant son or returns a lost article to a Gentile. When a Jew murders a Gentile, there will be no death penalty. When a Jew steals from a Gentile, he may keep whatever he steals. The Gentiles are outside the protection of the law, and God has exposed their money to Israel. Jews may use lies, subterfuges to circumvent a Gentile. All Gentile children are animals. Gentile girls are in a state of nidah, meaning filth, from birth, and Gentiles prefer sex with cows. Says Yeshua's mother was a whore. She, who was the descendant of princes and governors, played the harlot with carpenters. It is stated that in the uncensored text of the Talmud it is written that Yeshua's mother, Miriam, the hairdresser, had sex with many men. Okay, a passage from Sanhedrin. 106 gloats over the early age at which Jesus died. Hast thou heard how old Balaam was? He replied, it is not actually stated, but since it is written, bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days, it follows that he was 33 or 34 years old. Now horrible blasphemies against Yeshua, while it is the standard disinformation practice of apologists for the Talmud to deny that it contains any scurrilous references to Jesus Christ, certain Orthodox Jewish organizations are more forthcoming and do admit that the Talmud not only mentions Yeshua, but disparages him as a sorcerer and a demented sex freak. These Orthodox Jewish organizations make this admission perhaps out of the belief that Jewish supremacy is so well established in the modern world that they need not concern themselves with adverse reactions. For example, on the website of the Orthodox Jewish Hasidic Lubavitch Group, one of the largest in the world, we find the following statement complete with Talmudic citations. The Talmud Babylonian edition records other sins of Jesus the Nazarene. He and his disciples practiced sorcery and black magic. They led the Jews astray into idolatry and were sponsored by foreign Gentile powers for the purpose of subverting Jewish worships. He was sexually immoral, worshipped statues of stone, a brick is mentioned, was cut off from the Jewish people for his wickedness and refused to repent. He learned witchcraft in Egypt and to perform miracles, used procedures that involved cutting his flesh, which is also explicitly banned in the Bible. And I just want to say, yeah, there is the mystery, the magic and mystery and ancient wisdom through the Egyptian culture. And it was said that he did spend time in Egypt, and they are calling it, of course, witchcraft. And, you know, I have to say that the First Nations people in their ways and their ceremonies and their abilities, also in their sacred practices, were called devil worshippers. I'm just adding that in here as a little aside. Okay. Let us examine further some of these Antichrist Talmud passages. This says here in Gittin 57a that Jesus is in hell being boiled in hot excrement. And Sanhedrin 43a says Jesus, or Yeshu, and in Sinusin footnote, Yeshu the Nazarene was executed because he practiced sorcery. It is taught that on the eve of Passover, Yeshua was hung, and 40 days before this, the proclamation was made. Yeshua is to be stoned to death because he had practiced sorcery and has lured the people to idolatry. He was an enticer, and of such thou shalt not pity or condone. And the elders were once sitting in the gate when two young lads passed by. One covered his head, and the other uncovered his head. Of him who uncovered his head, Rabbi Eliezer remarked that he is a bastard. Rabbi Yeshua remarked that he is the son of a nidah, a child conceived during a woman's menstrual. Rabbi Akiba said that he is both a bastard and a son of a nidah. They said, "What induced you to contradict the opinion of your colleagues?" And he replied, "I will prove it concerning him. He went to the lad's mother and found her sitting in the market selling beans. He said to her, 'My daughter, if you will answer the question I will put to you, I will bring you to the world to come, eternal life.' She said to him, 'Swear it to me.' And Rabbi Akiba, taking the oath with his lips, but annulling it in his heart, said to her, 'What is the status of your son?' She replied, 'When I entered the bridal chamber, I was nidah, menstruating, and my husband kept away from me. But my best man had intercourse with me, and this son was born to me. Consequently, the child was both a bastard and a son of a nidah.' So it was declared, Blessed be the God of Israel, who revealed his secret to Rabbi Akiba. In addition to the theme that God rewards clever liars, the preceding Talmud discussion is actually about Yeshua, the bastard boy who uncovered his head and was conceived in the filth of menstruation. The boy's adulterous mother in this Talmud story is the mother of Christ, Blessed Mary. The Talmud contains a few explicit references to Yeshua. These references are certainly not complimentary. There seems little doubt that the account of the execution of Yeshua on the eve of Passover does refer to the Christian Jesus, or Yeshua. The passage in which Jesus' punishment in hell is described also seems to refer to the Christian Jesus. It is a piece of anti-Christian polemic dating from the post-70 CE period. According to the Talmud, Jesus was executed by a proper rabbinical court for idolatry, inciting other Jews to idolatry, and contempt of rabbinical authority. All classical Jewish sources which mention his execution are quite happy to take responsibility for it. The more popular accounts, which were nevertheless taken quite seriously, such as the notorious Toldat Yeshu, are even worse. For in addition to the above crimes, they accuse him of witchcraft. The very name Yeshua was for Jews a symbol of all that is abominable, and this popular tradition still persists. The Hebrew form of the name Yeshu was interpreted as an acronym for the curse, "May his name and memory be wiped out," which is used as an extreme form of abuse. In fact, anti-Zionist Orthodox Jews sometimes refer to Herzl as Herzl Jesus, and I have found in religious Zionist writings expressions such as Nasser Jesus, and more recently, Arafat Jesus. Now, the Talmud attacks Christians and Christian books. And here's some very sick and insane teachings of the Talmud. And these are written in the Talmud. Gittin 6.9a says, to heal his flesh, a Jew should take dust that lies within the shadow of an outdoor toilet and mix with honey and eat it. Now you talk about witchcraft. I mean, just saying. Shabbat 41a, the law regulating the rule for how to urinate in a holy way is given. And this one states that Adam had sexual intercourse with all of the animals in the Garden of Eden. And this is another one that declares that agriculture is the lowest of occupations. And a Jew may marry a 3-year-old girl, specifically 3 years and a day old. And a Jew may have sex with a child as long as the child is less than 9 years old. Now this is written in Sanhedrin 54b, and then Knuthboth 11b, when a grown-up man has intercourse with a little girl, it is nothing. And Yebamoth 59b, a woman who had intercourse with a beast is eligible to marry a Jewish priest. A woman who has sex with a demon is also eligible to marry a Jewish priest. And Hagigah in 27a states that no rabbi can ever go to hell. And Baba Maziah 59b, a rabbi debates God and defeats him, and God admits the rabbi won the debate. And the rabbis taught, on coming from a privy, in other words an outdoor toilet, a man should not have sexual intercourse till he has waited long enough to walk half a mile, because the demon of the privy is with him for that time. If he does, his children will be epileptic. And again, talk about witchcraft. Gittin 69b, to heal the disease of pleurisy, a Jew should take the excrement of a white dog and knead it with balsam, and if he can possibly avoid it, he should not eat the dog's excrement, as it loosens the limbs. It is forbidden for dogs, for women, or palm trees to pass between two men, nor may others walk between dogs, women, or palm trees. Special dangers are involved if the women are menstruating or sitting in a crossroads. A Jewish man is obligated to say the following prayer every day. Thank you, God, for not making me a Gentile, a woman, or a slave. Satan is the destroyer. Satan's people know only how to destroy. They destroy nations, they destroy cultures, education, music, art, and all religions. They destroy truth, and they promote lies. The Talmudic books are the hideous, hate-filled volumes that govern the Jewish culture, even of non-religious, atheistic Jews, and the volumes that are considered the holiest books by Orthodox Judaism. Jesus declared that the Pharisees and their followers, those who kept the oral traditions that were later written down as the Talmud, as the children of their father, the devil. You know, I just have to say, I know nothing about The Talmud, I know nothing about the Hasidic Jews. I do know they're very strict in many ways, but I can't really speak to the strictness. I do know that it sounds to me like they have a lot of paranoia here, and also this ancient stuff about witchcraft keeps popping up. So certainly they had to have believed this early on, and if they saw this man, Yeshua, performing miracles, they probably felt that it was witchcraft. And certainly he was preaching against their rabbis. So the people who now are governed by the Talmud, whether culturally or religiously, are the spiritual offspring of the Pharisees, because they are governed by the same satanic instructions found in the Talmud. They are, as a culture and or religion, Satan's people. They do his work. He is a destroyer, and they are destroyers. The only thing they know how to do is destroy. They have been operating in the world ever since they murdered Yeshua, or Jesus Christ. And they are operating in the world today, scheming, plotting to murder the followers or the true Christians, and to blot out God's holy land, or holy word, from the face of the earth. And Jesus said that Satan's people, the followers of the Talmud, are responsible for all the righteous bloodshed. Jews infiltrated the monarchies of Europe through intermarriage. Now this is new information, because of course how would we know this, that this happened? So crypto-Jews of the Iberian Peninsula, the term Moreno, which may be derived from the New Testament phrase Maranatha, our Lord hath come, denotes in Spanish damned, accursed, banned, and also hog, and in the Portuguese it is used as an opprobrious epithet of the Jews because they do not eat pork. The name was applied to the Spanish Jews who, through compulsion or for form's sake, became converted to Christianity in consequence of the cruel persecutions of 1391 and of Vicente Ferrer's missionary sermons. And I do know that little bit of information that in Spain a lot of the Jews did convert to Christianity because they were pretty much being tortured if they didn't. So they claimed to be Christians, and this is true. It says, I read this also, but they secretly practiced their Judaism. They were crypto-Jews, it says, Jews who masqueraded as non-Jews, such as those pretending to be Christians or even pretending to be secular non-Jews. These Moranos, or converts as they were called in Spain, or Cristados Novos in Portugal, or Chutas in the Balearic Isles, or Anusim in Hebrew, numbered more than 100,000. With them the history of the Pyrenean Peninsula, and indirectly that of the Jews also, enters upon a new phase, for they were the immediate cause both of the introduction of the Inquisition into Spain and of the expulsion of the Jews from that country. The wealthy Morenos, who engaged extensively in commerce, industries, and agriculture, intermarried with families of old nobility. Now, I did see a documentary a couple of months ago on this very thing I'm talking about right here, and this elderly woman who was an archivist of her whole family, a genealogist, and pretty much an upstanding person in this community in Spain, had discovered in ancient books that have been in the libraries of her people who were notables in this village, in this town, and numerous books, and she was, through her research, discovered this very thing, that her own people, I guess they claimed to be Christians, but they were Jews, and they kept that secret, and probably most likely they were the wealthy Morenos that the author is writing about here, who engaged extensively in industries, agriculture. They intermarried into nobility, and they were basically the ones who started the Inquisition against the Jews, their own people. So, beginning with the second generation, the Neo-Christians, crypto-Jews, usually intermarried with women of their own sect. They became very influential through their wealth and intelligence and were called to important positions in government circles and in the Cortes. They practiced medicine and law and taught at the universities, while their children frequently achieved high ecclesiastical honors. Jewish infiltration of the Catholic Church. And here's where we get into this bit of information. Because they denied that they were Jews and they had changed, taken the Christian rites and so on, they actually became infiltrated into the Catholic Church, and that's where she's going with this. Is it possible that the Roman Catholic Church was a Jewish project from the beginning? There is, in fact, a long and fascinating history of Jewish infiltration of the Roman Catholic Church that has been nonetheless, and by clever design, perceived as a Gentile institution. If Roman Catholicism was a project of Kabbalist Jews for the purpose of subverting Christianity, it is conceivable that this Judaized church has functioned for nearly 2 millennia as a covert branch of Judaism, whose handlers gradually and imperceptibly shifted Western Christendom to more advanced stages of apostasy than was possible during the vigilant period of the early church, when ecumenical councils convened to combat heresy rather than to embrace it. At the present time, it can be safely stated that the Roman Catholic Church is merely a front for Judeo-Freemasonry to draw apostate Christendom into the Messianic kingdom of the Antichrist. Maybe that's where we're reading some other information. Patty and I were reading about the Pope may be the false prophet, and certainly we know what's going on, the Catholic Church too. So I'm just looking at this here from this perspective now. So during the Middle Ages, the infiltration and conquests of Christendom were achieved by 2 methods. The Inquisition, which started in Spain in 1478, forced multitudes of Jews to renounce Judaism and to embrace Catholicism, and these converts were called conversos. Conversos typically went through the motions of the Roman Catholic religion, but remained Jews inwardly and practiced their Jewish rites in the privacy of their homes. Now, other Jews called Morenos feigned conversion to Christianity and practiced Roman Catholicism outwardly, while practicing Judaism or Kabbalism privately. A number of Morenos took positions in the clergy. The motive of conversos was self-preservation. The Morenos' destruction of the church and all things Christian. The result of these parallel operations was the Jewish occupation of the Roman Catholic Church. And this is from Mystery Babylon the Great Catholic or Jewish by Barbara Aho, an author, that information. The lasting victory of the Jewish Freemasonic and Jewish Communist Revolution since the end of the 18th century up to our day is to be attributed to the Jewish, what is called the Jewish fifth column, that has smuggled itself into the bosom of the Catholic Church and also many of the Protestant churches. This fifth column is formed by the descendants of the Jews who in earlier centuries were converted to Christianity and seemingly held in enthusiastic manner to the Catholic religion, while in secret they preserved their Jewish belief and carried out clandestinely the Jewish rites and ceremonies. Now, for this purpose, they organized themselves into communities and secret synagogues, which were active centuries long in secret. These apparent Christians, but secret Jews, began centuries ago to infiltrate the Christian society in order to attempt to control it from within. For this reason, they sowed false doctrines and differences of opinion, and they even attempted to gain control of the clergy in the different Christian churches. With all this, they applied the cunning of introducing crypto-Jewish Christians into the seminaries of the priesthood, who could gain admission into the honorary offices in the Catholic Church, and then into the Protestant churches, upon whose division these secret Jews had so much influence. Now the Merovingians, King Merovi was king of the Franks from 415 to 457 A.D. Clovis, the grandson of Merovi, converted to Christianity, along with his Jewish household and 3,000 Jewish warriors, and became the first Merovingian king of France. These Jewish monarchs promulgated a heretical version of the gospel, a heresy, which is today being reintroduced through books and movies such as the Da Vinci Code. Their heresy goes like this. And I've kind of read something about this, that there are certain beliefs. And here's something where everyone who's listening, and myself included, is just listen to what this perspective is and make your own discernment. Because like I said, there are many things about our history that we have no clue about, that has been really hidden, manipulated, and we've been lied to. Now, I am not saying that, again, anything that I read, I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. It is food for thought. And I think we need food for thought because it really helps us to grow, not only intellectually, of course, but just gain information so that we can also discern, and maybe there are pieces in here that are crucial for what we need to know today about what is going on. And as I go further into this read here, you will see why these things may very well relate to what is happening today. So this heresy, it is said this is heresy, okay, but this is a belief. Jesus did not die on the cross. Somehow he survived. He was taken down alive from the cross and later married Mary Magdalene, who escaped Israel with the bloodline of Jesus, the heir apparent to the king of the Jews, and the issue of a royal marriage that combined the royal lines of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Now, Mary Magdalene found her way to Gaul, and I've read this book about Mary Magdalene. I read this whole story about the people who live there in Gaul, the French people, and they're sort of like stories of, now we're going back thousands of years, right? But the stories that they have passed down through generations seem to point to a woman coming with a group of people to the shore there and with a child. Okay, pregnant with this child. She was pregnant and so on, but did give birth. They spoke about her. This is, I guess, they call it myths. I always say that you have to think sometimes, maybe a greater majority of times, myths are really facts. And that's all I'm going to say on that. So, where they established a Jewish community, and it is not clear what happened to Jesus at this time, as his name never appears again in this story. The bloodline perpetuated itself intact and incognito for some 400 years. And it's true, there are some people are saying or making claims today that they are the bloodline of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. Again, I don't know. I can't say that that's factual or not. So, including dynastic intermarriages not only with other Jewish families, but with Romans and Visigoths as well. And in the 5th century, Jesus' lineage became allied with the royal line of the Franks, thereby engendering the Merovingian dynasty. Merovingian, I'm trying to say that word. So, this Jesus-Mary Magdalene heresy is a subterfuge for Merovingian claims to divinity in their lineage. The importance of the deception is that the elitists claim it is a truth and claim they have the divine right of kings to rule the earth. These aristocratic Merovingian children married into almost all the noble families of Europe during the 5th, 6th, and 7th centuries, and this has prompted more than one historian to suggest that the foundation of European nobility is Jewish. Now, I know this bloodline and all they're going to talk about this bloodline has everything to do here with the elite and the bloodline and the hidden cabal. So, all right, so let's continue. The Protestant Reformation. There is a compelling evidence that the Protestant Reformation was the brainchild of the Merovingian Jews who functioned as agent provocateurs throughout the Holy Roman Empire, whose ultimatums for reform were met with more flagrant abuses by the Merovingian popes. Now, some agents of the Reformation were as violent as the popes, giving Protestant Christianity a reputation for brutality, as the Marranos had formerly done within the Catholic Church. Rosicrucian Jeff Nisbet divulged the brilliant strategy of the Merovingian Jews in Atlantis Rising magazine. And this is what he said. In one fell swoop, the Christian world was cleft in twain. No longer would Rome be able to raise great armies from its subject nations to crush heresies wherever the papal finger pointed. There was no longer just one big boy on the block. Another had moved in, and this was the mightiest church the world had ever known, had been divided and conquered. But the Reformed Church would not be allowed to remain squeaky clean. The life of Mary's grandson, James I, king of both Scotland and England, would be threatened by a plot hatched by witches in 1590. The celebrated but trumped-up case of the North Berwick witches kick-started over a century of Scottish witch hunts and proved that your average Presbyterian could be just as vindictive as your average Catholic when it came to fighting Satan's minions. While an equilibrium had been established between two great Christian powers, neither can yet lay claim to being the saintliest, and each still has that heavy cross of guilt to bear. Another perfect double cross, perhaps? The Merovingians and the one world government. Okay, now we're getting closer to where we are today. Please note that just because I quote the following portion of Church's book, this is written by J.R. Church, that does not mean that I endorse everything else that he writes. There is a secret organization in Europe which down through the centuries has been the guardian of a so-called holy bloodline. Participants in this clandestine group believe that members of this sacred lineage are descended from Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, or Jesus Christ. This mysterious group is presently made up of over 9,000 men, and this includes Protestants, Jews, Muslims, and Roman Catholics. Their doctrine sidesteps the basic tenets of those beliefs and replaces them with the teaching of their greatest prophet, whom they believe to be is Buddha. Over the last 3 decades, stories have been surfacing in France about the existence of such a group. Little by little, they have been preparing the political climate across the world for the emergence of a one-world government and the introduction of a global dictator. According to the tenets of the organization, Jesus Christ did not die on Calvary, but merely pretended to die, was taken from the cross, stolen from the tomb, and was believed to have married Mary Magdalene and even produced children. They claim that when the Romans destroyed the temple at Jerusalem in 70 AD, that Mary Magdalene fled with her sacred children by boat across the Mediterranean to France, and there she found refuge in a Jewish community. Future generations of her offspring were said to have married into the royal Frankish family, and by the 5th century they produced a king. His name was Merovi. He was the first of a series of kings called the Merovingian bloodline. And I suppose that if you like to do research, or you want to do research, that you could actually Google the Merovingian bloodline, Merovingian, okay, the Merovingian bloodline, and find out, if this is the source of the elite, the cabal, that are, presently really moving and pushing for this one-world government. See how far back our history of manipulation seems to be going. So, it is said that the offspring of Merovi were noted for a birthmark above their heart, a small red cross. This symbol eventually became the emblem of the guardians of the Grail. Furthermore, these kings claimed to have clairvoyant powers and the ability to heal the sick by the laying on of hands. Merovi, king of the Franks from 447 to 458 AD, was an adherent to the religious cult of Diana. His son, Childeric, practiced witchcraft. His son, Clovis, in 481 to 511 AD, adopted Christianity in 496 AD. The Roman Emperor Constantine embraced Christianity in 324 AD, divided the Roman Empire, and eventually moved his throne to Constantinople, which is called Istanbul, Turkey, today. Constantine upset the political structure of the Imperial Roman Empire and created a division in 4th century Christianity. So I just dropped Patty a little note. I'm going to be taking a break at 6 at the top of the hour. And for 5 minutes, I guess, and then I'll be back, okay? So let me just finish here. After the death of Constantine, the Roman Empire split between the East and the West. The Eastern Orthodox Church grew in power and influence, while the Roman Church faltered. The Bishop of Rome made a pact with Clovis, the grandson of Merovi, and the king of the Franks, calling him the new Constantine, and giving him authority to preside over a Christianized Roman Empire. Here's where the term Holy Roman Empire, okay, came in. The Pope did so to consolidate the power of the faltering Roman Church. Now the so-called offspring of Mary Magdalene were thus established as leaders of the empire. 5 generations after Clovis, Dagobert fathered 2 sons who carried on the Merovingian bloodline. The first was Clovis II, and the succession continued to Childeric III. He was the last known Merovingian to sit upon the throne of France. It is difficult to trace many of the ancient genealogies. It is said that the Merovingian bloodline found its way to most of the thrones of Europe, though. From the Merovingian bloodline has come most of the ruling families of Europe, and has even included some popes of the Roman Catholic Church. Among them was Pope Stephen, leader of the Church in the 11th century, during the years of the Crusades. The Crusades, by the way, played an important part in the promotion of the Merovingian bloodline. Many of the Crusaders were French who went to Palestine to liberate the Holy Land from the Muslims. By 1061 AD, the Catholic Crusaders had conquered the city of Jerusalem and established Godefroy de Bouillon of the Merovingian bloodline on the throne of Jerusalem. Aiming to be the lineage of David, Godefroy de Bouillon organized a secret society called Ordre de Sion, today called the Priory or de Zion. The clandestine Priory of Zion still exists. After almost 900 years, it is very much alive today. In the years that followed, Godefroy de Bouillon and his secret group, the Priory of Sion, or Zion, began to lay plans for a front group to carry out their goals. So, Hughes de Payen organized the Knights Templar and made Baudin, the brother of Godefroy de Bouillon, its first Grand Master. They adopted the Merovingian birthmark of their emblem, which was a red cross, or rosy cross, Rosicrucian, which is an elitist secret society still existing today. And I'm going to take my short break. I hope Patty's on it with me here, and I'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Turn to the sun, you want to start to let
Okay, I'm back, and I hope you're enjoying this. I'm finding it very interesting, and I do see some threads that are very significant that I know is having to do with what is going on in our world today, in the one world order, the so-called prophecies of the last pope, last president. I mean, we don't know what's going to unfold, but I think this history here is very, very interesting to me. So I hope you're liking it. I hope you're enjoying it. So the Knights Templar, the stated purpose was to guard the highways around Jerusalem to protect the pilgrims coming for worship. And those 9 men supposedly gave of themselves to go to Jerusalem and become the poor knights of the temple. Remember that the temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 A.D., though. They pledged themselves to be subject only to the Pope and to no other political or ecclesiastical authority. Upon their arrival in Jerusalem, they were given living quarters in the palace of Baduin, the king of Jerusalem, on the temple site. Though there is no historical proof, it is believed that they spent the next 9 years digging up the buried treasure of the ancient Jewish temple. In 1953, a copper scroll was found in a cave near the Dead Sea, which told of a fabulous temple treasure estimated at more than 138 tons of gold and silver, which had been buried by the Israelite priesthood in 64 locations before the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 A.D. 24 of those hoards of gold were buried under the Temple Mountain. It is believed that the Knights Templar plundered the treasure of the temple and took it back to Europe. After 9 years in Jerusalem, the Templars returned to Europe wealthy beyond belief. They formed the first bank lending institution in the world. Attention to that. In the following years, they built castles all over Europe and became famous as the guardians of the Holy Grail, treasure of the temple. It is believed that the Priory of Zion organized the Knights Templar to excavate the temple site in hopes of finding the fabulous treasure of the temple. Evidently, they were successful, for they instituted an international banking system across Europe and had the resources to loan gold to kings and governments. The secret purpose for the Knights Templar, however, was to preserve the Merovingian bloodline in hopes of one day establishing a world government and putting their king upon the throne, a king who could claim to be the offspring of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. Legends were told of their exploits. They were the guardians of the Holy Grail. But nobody kind of really knew what that Holy Grail was, did they? Really, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's the bloodline is the Holy Grail. Maybe it's the secret is the Holy Grail. The so-called cup from which Jesus drank at the Last Supper, and of the Grail family, the bloodline of the Magdalene, the Da Vinci Code claims that the Holy Grail is not the cup that Christ drank from. It is the remains of Mary Magdalene, the womb or ark that bore Jesus' sacred children, also called the Ark of the Covenant, which is secretly hidden from the public in a location known only to the Priory of Zion. And that's a fact. They do have that. It's in a secret place. In 1188, there was a split between the Ordre de Zion and the Knights Templar. On October 13th in 1307, all the Templars of France were arrested, including their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay. Does that sound familiar? The young men's branch of Freemasonry is named the de Molay Society, after this Templar Grand Master. In 1314 A.D., Jacques de Molay and Geoffroy de Charnay, owner of the shroud, today called the Shroud of Turin, were burned at the stake. From that point on, the Knights seemed to vanish from the stage of history. Nonetheless, the order does continue to exist. The French Templars found a refuge in Scotland, where the group maintained itself as a coherent body for at least 400 years, and they eventually developed into an organization called the Scottish Rite. Mormonism also has a philosophical connection to the order of the ancient Templars. In the last century, Helena Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy, spoke of an esoteric wisdom tradition running back through the Rosicrucians to the Knights Templar. The teachings of Helena Blavatsky can be best seen in the New Age movement of today. Let us not forget that the Order of the Knights Templar was, at first, only a front organization for a more secretive group known as the Priory of Zion, whose real purpose was to capture the wealth of the world, establish their own world government, and introduce a Merovingian king to sit upon the throne in Jerusalem. They are said to be the true possessors of the temple treasury and the behind-the-scenes controllers of the world currencies. Merovingian infiltration of the Christian Church, promotion of monasticism, and instigation of the Protestant Reformation. The Merovingian infiltration of the Christian Church through monasticism of anonymous authorship. Okay, this is a book. Anonymous, wow. That was a book. The Merovingian infiltration of the Christian Church through monasticism. An anonymous authorship makes a compelling case that the Avignon papacy, which was the second pope established in Avignon, France, who opposed the pope in Rome, was a planned conspiracy executed by the French monarch Philip le Bel, who was a Merovingian. Now, this accords with statements in Merovingian sources that the Templar Purge was orchestrated for the purpose of downsizing and relocating the order to Scotland, where they would enjoy the protection of the St. Clair family and freedom they did not have on the continent. In the British Isles, the Templars, under the protection and leadership of Henry Sinclair, would be at liberty to establish the Order of the Rose Cross, or the Secret Society of Rosicrucians, Freemasonry, Unitarianism, and the Baptist churches. Merovingian King Philip, who arrested the Templars on October 13, 1307, who placed his cousin Clement on the chair of Peter as his accomplice, insisted that the Pope remain in France rather than Rome. This began what is named the Babylonian captivity of the Church, a 68-year period in which the Church was forced to remain in Avignon, France. The next successive 6 popes would be French and Merovingian, the second of whom, Clement, began formulating the doctrine of indulgences, which later became the spark of the Protestant Reformation, as planned. The majority of Templars who escaped the arrest in 1307 went to Scotland, which was the first to break from the Church through the Declaration of Arbroath, the document on which the 1776 U.S. Declaration was based. One signatory of the letter to Pope John, April 4, 1320, this was the day that NATO was later formed, was the grandfather of Henry Sinclair, Earl of Orkney and Shetland Islands off Norway, who lived in Roslin Castle, Scotland. It was he who brought Templar treasure to Nova Scotia in 1398, 94 years pre-Columbus. The Sinclairs were bishops of Ross and hereditary Grand Masters of Freemasonry. Prince Michael Stuart, president of the Council of Princes, is said to be a constitutional advisory body to the present-day European Union. Prince Michael is also the Knight Grand Commander of the Chivalric Military Order of Jerusalem, the Knights Templar, and holds various other titles and high rank in the Merovingian bloodline. It is obvious that from shortly after the time of Christ, the Jews had, number one, set up, or at least strongly integrated the Catholic Church as a supposedly Christian front for covert Judaism. Two, they intermarried with virtually all the royal families in Europe. And three, eventually instigated the Protestant Reformation to get Protestant Christians fighting against Catholic Christians. And four, subsequently infiltrated the Protestant churches as well. Now, through these two avenues, religion and government, they were in a position to control the vast majority of all the population of the world. First Jewish Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland in 1897. The first Zionist Congress was to have taken place in Munich, Germany. However, due to considerable opposition by the local community leadership, both Orthodox and Reform, it was decided to transfer the proceedings to Basel, Switzerland. Theodor Herzl acted as chairperson of the Congress, which was attended by some 200 participants. The major achievements of the Congress were its formulation of the Zionist platform, known as the Basel Program, and the foundation of the World Zionist Organization. And the program stated, Zionism seeks for the Jewish people a publicly recognized, legally secured homeland in Palestine. Are you with me on this? This is what the average Jew believes is Zionism, the right to a Jewish homeland in Palestine. But the elitists know that true Zionism means that the elitist Jews have the right to rule over all nations in the world, take over all the natural resources of every nation in the world, and to destroy the entire Gentile population of the world. Now, if you want to go further into this, you might want to Google the truth about the World Zionist Organization, if you're interested. This gave clear expression to Herzl's political Zionism in contrast with the settlement-orientated activities of the more loosely organized Hebat Zion. He was elected president of the Zionist Organization, and an Inner Actions Committee and a Greater Actions Committee were elected to run the affairs of the movement between Congresses. And in his diary, Herzl wrote, Were I to sum up the Basel Congress in a word, which I shall guard against pronouncing publicly, it would be this. At Basel, I founded the Jewish state. The protocols of the learned elders of Zion, the plan of the Jews to rule the world. And you can Google this, www.3worldwars.com/protocols.htm. Okay, www.3worldwars.com/protocols.htm for further information. The document known now as the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion is one of the most important documents ever to come to light in the world. It can be described as the blueprint for the domination of the world by a secret brotherhood. In fact, the title of the second publication in 1922 was called The World Conquest Through World Government. It is graphic in its contempt for those who will be its victims. In it, profound understanding of the human condition and mind, and it is equally graphic in detailing the methodology it will use against and with the complicity of the world's population in such a way as to go unrecognized by the vast majority of its participants. And boy, does this ring so true. Yes, the profound understanding of the human condition and mind and its methodology, yes, even with the complicity of the world's population, and that means like using understanding the human condition and the mind, they will get the complicity of the world's population, and it will go unrecognized. The vast majority of the participants, it seems, like this is what we've been talking about. The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion is a document that should be read by all. No other single document provides us with such a clear understanding of why the world is gradually moving toward a one-world government controlled by an irreproachable hidden hand. In the Protocols, we are given clear insights as to why so many incomprehensible political decisions are made in both local, national, and international politics, which seems to continually work against the favor of the masses and in favor of the vested interests of the banking industrial cartel, in other words, the global power elite. The average person normally reacts with outrage and horror today at the very suggestion that there may be a conspiracy as grand as the Protocols. But the average person has absolutely no information on which to base his or her opinion. The reaction to exposure of this ancient conspiracy is merely a pre-programmed Pavlovian reaction created and instilled by the very penetrators of the same ancient conspiracy. I'm sorry, by the very perpetrators of the ancient conspiracy, yes. And today very few will dare speak above a whisper of that all-encompassing oppression of mankind. Yes, but we've been speaking about it. Is anybody listening? It is extremely rare today to find information about the ancient conspiracy due to the mass censorship of the printed word and the unwillingness of the general population to consider as a possibility something that they have been brought up since to see as outrageous, ridiculous. Each generation is born into a world of greater censorship and illusion. Yes, and that is why I am reading this to you today. That's me speaking, Barbara Three Crow. As you read further, please try to keep an open mind and realize that your initial reaction, and this I would say too, I've said this before, that your initial reaction has been over years of newspaper and television exposure. We know the media, mainstream media, is bought and paid for by these very... So what you're about to read will actually shock you. And here's the history of the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. In 1884, the daughter of a Russian general, Justine Glinka, was in Paris obtaining secret political information to be communicated back to Russia. She employed a Jewish assistant, Shorst, a member of the Mizraim Lodge in Paris. Shorst offered to obtain for her documents to Russia on payment of 2,500 francs. She forwarded the French original, accompanied by a Russian translator, to the Tsar in St. Petersburg, but it was suppressed by those under obligation to wealthy Jews. The Tsar never received it, and Glinka was eventually banished to her estate in Orel. Glinka gave a copy, though, to Alex Silkohotin, who showed the document to two friends. Stepanov and Professor Sergius A. Nilus. The former had it printed and circulated privately in 1897. The second, Nilus, published it for the first time in Russia in 1901 in a book titled The Great Within the Small. About the same time, a friend of Nilus, G. Butmi, brought a copy to England, where it was apparently deposited in the British Museum on August 10th in 1906. But the note here says the British Museum deny ever having received a copy of these protocols. Meanwhile, Jewish members of the Russian police, minutes of proceedings of the Basel Congress in 1897 had been obtained, and these were found to correspond with these protocols. In January 1917, Nilus prepared a second edition, revised and documented for publication. But before it could be put on the market, the revolution of March 1917 had taken place, and Kerensky, who had succeeded to power, ordered the whole edition of Nilus's book to be destroyed. In 1924, Professor Nilus was arrested by the Cheka in Kiev. He was imprisoned, and he was tortured. He was told by the Jewish president of the court that this treatment was meted out to him for having done them incalculable harm in publishing the protocols. Released for a few months, he was again led before the Cheka, this time in Moscow, and confined and set at liberty in February 1926. He died in exile in the district of Vladimir on January 13th, 1929. A few copies of Nilus's second edition were saved and sent to other countries where they were published. In Germany by Gottfried Zumbick, 1919, in England by the Britons in 1920, in France, an International des Sociétés de Secrets, and where else? In the United States by Small Minard and Company in 1920. The protocols gained, even in Italian, Russian, Arabic, and even Japanese. The protocols gained widespread recognition upon their translation to English in 1920. They soon became notorious. Esteemed newspapers such as the Times, the Morning Post, whose Moscow correspondent Victor Martson was responsible in 1921 for the translation used in this document, covered the story in numerous articles, much to the chagrin of world Jewry, who immediately began to propaganda bandwagon rolling. They not only denied that the protocols were a Jewish plot, but also that there was any plot whatsoever. The latter was quite clearly false to all educated men and women of the time. Probably so much money and energy were never before in history expended on the effort to suppress a single document. And here, Protocols of Zion, fraud or genuine? There have been many attempts to discount these protocols as a fraud, and the fact remains that there is no documented proof that the protocols of the elders of Zion are what they say they are. Allegations of forgery and fraud have dogged their public history. However, despite many opinions to the contrary, the documents have never been categorically proved to be fraudulent. Besides, why would an anonymous document be forged? The fact also remains that since the apparent publication, world events have unfolded exactly according to their description. Surely this should be proof enough that a plan such as the protocols exists. Henry Ford, in an interview published in the New York World, February 17th, 1921, put the case for the protocols tersely and convincingly thus, in quotes, "The only statement I care to make about the protocols is that they fit in with what is going on. They are 16 years old, fitted the world situation up to this time, and they fit it now, End of quote, by Henry Ford. We are gradually being mobilized into a new world order. The one world government is being facilitated by the gradual movement of nation-states into larger power blocks such as the European Union and NAFTA and so forth. The United Nations has come into power as a global police for the excuse of being a protector and a benefactor of the world, exactly as outlined in the protocols. The Jews have symbolically returned to Palestine, as the State of Israel now exists as the official universal homeland of all Jews, despite the vast majority of Jews having no racial connection to Israel whatsoever. Here's where she goes into, and we've read this before, about these are not the true Jewish people, and I'm going to read that how she discerns that now, and I've read this before. This whole bloodline, the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, is the most blatantly satanic document in world history. It lists all the steps that are necessary to establish the New World Order and its ultimate leader. It is obvious that these plans for the establishment of the New World Order are so brilliantly conceived and written, they could only be the work of supernatural guiding spirits. I have been saying that what's going on in our world today has to me, a thread of, very dark. Very dark. So the protocols are organized as follows. Get your pencil and your paper. Blueprint for world domination. Advent of a Masonic kingdom. A king of the blood of Zion, of the dynasty's root of David. The king of the Jews will be the real pope. The world ruler will be the patriarch of an international church. Let us now examine some pertinent quotes so you may become familiar with the type of plans the protocols set forth, the type of plans the protocols are setting forth, thus allowing you to more accurately understand why we believe so strongly that the planned Third World War is almost upon us. Remember, the protocols are at least 100 years old. Using terrorism to keep governments in check. Now, some of this you guys, I know you're going to know. We've talked about these things, and we're going to say, aha, I knew that. In a word, to sum up our system of keeping the governments in check, we shall show our strength to one of them by terrorist attempts, and to all, if we allow the possibility of a general rising against us, we shall respond with the guns of America or China. That's protocol number 7, worldwide wars. I have a question. I don't know, maybe I haven't seen this, but I have not heard of, I haven't seen or read, any news, any information that ISIS has ever gone into the Israel properties or through the Israel boundaries or bombed Israel or taken out people of Israel. I just haven't. Now, I don't know. That's just my looking at that. I'm looking, okay, what's going on there? Just saying. Is it anyone? President Bush is now leading America in a global effort against terrorism. Oh, yeah, that's what that all started about. Yes, global effort against terrorism. It is any wonder that Bush is threatening to end the states who sponsor and or encourage terrorism. All right. Author Bill Cooper stated the final plan to achieve global government another way. He said the secret societies were planning as far back as 1917 to invent an artificial threat. And, an enemy is needed. And what a good one here, terrorism. An enemy is needed In order to bring humanity together in a one-world government, which they call the New World Order, you need a threat. And they've created an artificial threat. Global terrorism is obviously the artificial threat created to achieve the New World Order. Expect to see more and more warnings and terrorist activities in America and around the world. More words from the protocols on terror. Here's protocol number 11. The totalitarian state. The Gentiles are flock sheep and we are their wolves. And you know what happens when the wolves get hold of the flock. There is another reason also why they will close their eyes. For we shall keep promising them to give back all the liberties that we have taken away as soon as we have quelled the enemies of peace and tamed all parties. So if you get on the train or you get on the bus and they take you to the the FEMA camps, I'm always saying don't get on the bus, don't get on the ship, and don't get on the train. Okay, so they're going to promise you, we'll take care of you, but you need to go over here first, we'll feed you, you'll be protected, because we got to take care of the bad guys here, and then you can go home again. Yeah, you'll be able to go home again. It'll be all right. Okay. It is not worthwhile to say anything about how long a time they will be kept waiting for this return of their liberties. And that's quoted from Protocol number 11. Make no mistake about where this war on terrorism is leading us straight into totalitarianism. While the people, and here's Protocol 11 again, continuing, quote, while the peoples of the world are still stunned by the accomplished fact of the revolution, still in a condition of terror and uncertainty, they should recognize once for all that we are strong, so expugnable, so superabundantly filled with power, that in no case shall we take any account of them, and so, far from paying any attention to their opinions or wishes, we are ready and able to crush them irresistibly, with irresistible power, all expression or manifestation thereof, at every moment and in every place, that we have seized at once everything that we wanted. Then in fear and trembling they will close their eyes to everything, and be content to await what will be the end of it all. Protocol number 11, the totalitarian state. Stared in sheer terror at the crumbling of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon September 11th, they began to close their eyes and accept what our government and the mass media wanted them to believe. Even now, in fear and trembling, they will close their eyes to everything and be content to what will be the end of it all. Just as the guiding spirits of the protocols envisioned, Americans are closing their collective eyes, gladiating liberties for promised peace and safety. Ben Franklin's words to this effect seems to ring today with unusual the words of Benjamin Franklin. Quote, those who would give up liberties in order to achieve safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And here's still more words from the protocols on terror. We must create ferments, discords, and hostility. Do you all think this is happening out there now? We must create ferments, discords, and hostility by our intrigues, fill up all the threads which we have stretched into the cabinets of all states by means of the political, by economic treaties or loan obligations. In order to succeed in this, we use great cunning and penetration during negotiations and agreements, but as regards what is called the official language, we shall keep to the opposite tactics and assume the mask of honesty and, yes, of complacency. In the peoples and governments of the Gentiles, whom we have taught to look only at the outside, whatever we present to their ness, will still continue to accept us as the benefactors and the saviors of the human race. Further, the protocols of the learned elders of Zion tell us that the citizens will not be able to trust in anything leaders are telling them. Are we there now? Listen, the principal factor of success is the secrecy of its undertakings. The word should not be with the deeds of the dipped. This, of course, means that they will lie about everything. There yet? We should not be too surprised when the action not be understood. Are we there yet? Their reasoning is intentionally kept secret from us, turning humanity upside down with their beautiful and powerful rhetoric. This protocol number 13, some of it. When we come into our kingdom, our orators will expound great problems which have turned humanity in order to bring it, at the end, under our beneficent rule. And I want to read that again because this is what Patty and I have been talking about, and probably others. When we come into our kingdom, our orators will expound great problems which have turned humanity in order to bring it, at the end, under our beneficent rule. Who will ever suspect, then, that all these people were stage-managed by us according to a political plan which no one has just guessed at in the course of many centuries? And this is so true, because we've been lied, because we've been manipulated, incrementally herded in down this funneling us into this moment in time. President Clinton, aided by Vice President Al Gore, spent the entire years of his presidency expounding such great problems that have turned humanity upside down. Clinton Gore propounded environmental issues such as global warming, loss of habitat, species extinction, and many other environmental concerns. However, Bush Ashcroft seized upon their role in the final push for a world government, global terrorism. This mantra is continued under President Bush, who asserts every day that it has turned humanity upside down. And today we have, who else is continuing the global terrorism mantra that was started by President after 9/11? The majority of Americans have no idea they've been stage managed according to a political plan which has been on for over, get this, 2 centuries. Hey, remember we've been saying this is not just new. This is not new. This is not new. This is not just one president here. This is not just this administration. The American education system has done its dirty job of graduating citizens who cannot read or write enough to pay attention to what is going on. Today's citizens are also not schooled in critical thinking skills, and they do not know enough history to realize the trap into which Bush Ashcroft are leading us, and now today our other authorities. Doesn't matter their names. They're all the authorities. And yes, if you want to really find out about the ism, read the book Dumbing Down America. The dumbing down of America. Or you can YouTube it. There's a YouTube, The Dumbing Down of America. I think her name is, can't remember it now. Something like it's I'm not quite sure, but it's a very amazing depth that clarifies exactly this part of this plan to dumb down America aid system. On paper, President blank, 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 doesn't matter. I'm not going to say Bush. I'm not going to say anybody because it's just On paper, President so-and-so has all the dictatorial powers that Stalin ever possessed. He simply has not chosen to activate these powers just yet. When people begin getting knocks on the doors at midnight with arrest orders, silent security, they will too late know they have signed off their death warrant. At that time, American freedoms and constitutional guarantees will be abolished, and all by a Christian, compassionate, conservative Republican administration who waxed hot and heavy rhetorically by saying that our war on terrorism cannot be waged at the expense of our liberties. How ironic. Are we there yet? Protocol number 4. Consider this excerpt from the powerful rhetoric that is supposed to accompany this rush toward dictatorship in the guise of fighting terror. Moreover, the art of directing masses and individuals by means of cleverly related theory and verbiage, by regulations of life in common, and all sorts of other quirks, in which the common people understand things, belongs likewise to the specialists of our administrative brain. And here's protocol number 7, the power of a cooperative press, the mass media. Yeah, this is a very old document, and we're there. We must compel the governments of the Goyim, hey, that's us, folks, to take action in the direction favored by our widely conceived plan, by what we shall represent as public opinion, secretly prompted by us, means of that so-called great power, the power of the press, which, with few exceptions, is already in our hands. Yes, the mass media is already in their hands. And here's protocol number 7. Is the steam coming out of your ears yet, folks out there? You know, none of this is really new, or it really shouldn't be new to you listeners. If you've been really listening to, Awake Radio the last, 8-9 years, TCT, These Changing Times, and all of us here, and, yeah. A lot of you listeners out there, this should not be new to you, except perhaps it was difficult for you, and maybe, I don't know, to put it together as that this is actual written down, published secretly protocols that is affecting every one of us today. Written over 200 years ago. Maybe it was hard. Maybe it's hard, It is hard because how can you wrap your mind around that there are people? We always say this, how can these people do this? Well, and my response recently, as you've heard me say, because they've sold their soul to the devil, and they're being, led and prompted and ruled and owned by that. And that's how they can do this. And that this has been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries. This is the great agenda, the great plan. So you've had bits and pieces of this, but now here we are with this whole plan all written out. Protocol number 7, every American needs to understand the entire national press is controlled and is simply giving you the news you are supposed to have. And very soon all alternative sources of news, including this website, will be shut down. That time draws ever closer. In order to get public opinion to our hands, we must bring it in protocol. This is protocol number 5. In order to put public opinion into our hands, we must bring it into a state of bewilderment. Have you been bewildered out there? Don't let them get you bewildered. Don't let it happen. A state of bewilderment by giving expression from all sides to soldierly opinions. Yeah, he said, she said, he leaked this, she leaked that, they didn't leak this, they didn't leak that. Contradictory, and for such length of time as will suffice to make the average person lose their heads in the labyrinth and come to see that the best thing is to have no opinion of any kind in matters political. Now, you know why the Sunday morning TV program is full of ads that so fill their airways with opinions on everything, so that the average person is completely bewildered as to what is the truth. You know, news, mainstream don't tell you news anymore. Yeah, the talking head, and then they'll go to, I don't know, some dumb, idiotic thing that I can't even describe what it might be, but it's certainly not news. This type of TV programming was foreseen over 100 years ago in the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. You got that? 100 years ago. When you combine the power with the discussion of the mass media role, you can understand better the part of the plan coming up next. The principal object of Drake consists in this: to debilitate the public mind by criticism, to lead it away from serious reflections calculated to arouse resistance, to distract the forces of the mind toward a sham fight of empty eloquence. In all ages, the peoples of the world, equally with individuals, have accepted words for deeds, for they are content with a show and rarely pause out in the public arena where their promises are followed by performance. Therefore, we shall establish show institutions. Show institutions. This single paragraph tells us we need to know about politicians of both parties as they gradually guide us into the New World Order. They deliberately intend to debilitate our minds, and yes, to distract through sham speeches or empty eloquence. We certainly have seen and heard enough of this type of speaking to last us a lifetime. You can just put the name of any number of politicians on both sides of the aisle, and they fit this description. Talk, talk, and talk some more is the motto of the consummate politician. Today the talk is all about patriotism, blind patriotism. Yes, just as we did with Clinton, so are we doing in the Bush era today. We are accepting words for deeds, and rarely is to note in the public arena whether promises are followed by performance. The American people are sheep, ready to be sheared. The press was further supposed to fulfill a very basic need in this plan, the need for continual conflict in order to bring about the planned change. Now listen to this portion of the protocols. Now, I only have about 7 minutes, and they're here in this read. So you'll just have to tune in next week if you want to know more. Okay, listen to this portion. In the hands of the states today, there is a great force that creates the movement of thought in the people, and that is the press. The part played by the press is to keep pointing out requirements supposed to be indispensable and to create discontent. And that's protocol 2. And here's, the press is supposed to keep us in turmoil because the authors of the protocol firmly believed that conflict brings about change, and planned conflict brings about, get this, planned change, right? This was the Hegelian doctrine first espoused in 1823 by Freemason, giving Professor Hegel the concept: since we are moving by plan toward the calculated change of government, a global dictatorial government historically unprecedented in power and oppression, then we will need a lot of planned conflict fed us daily. We will need wars. We will need rumors of wars. We will need class conflict, and many more tidbits of bad news floods our consciousness. This is the plan. So get out of the net, the matrix, and stop listening to, all this conflict, all this stupid stuff, spinning. That's the plan. That's the plan. Stop being taken by it. I'm just saying. I'm going to read one more here. Establishing a dictatorship of magnificent proportions. Doesn't that word, doesn't like President Trump's words? Magnificent proportions. Establishing a dictatorship of magnificent proportions, in the quotes. These laws will withdraw one by one all the indulgences and liberties which have been permitted. I'll read that again. These laws will withdraw one by one all the indulgences and liberties which have been permitted. Are coming now? Some of it is. And our kingdom will be distinguished by a despotism of such magnificent proportions as to be at moment and in every place in a position to wipe out any who oppose us by deed or word. That's protocol number 5, despotism and modern progress. And again, I'm just got to say this, of magnificent proportions. What kind of laws is portion of the protocols foreseen that will withdraw one by one all the indulgences and liberties which have been permitted? The USA Act and its attendant pieces of attached legislation will prove to be the final undoing of our liberties and constitutional guarantees. Mark word. Did you catch the kind of dictatorship despot that is planned for every nation? A despotism of such magnificent proportions as to be at any moment and in every place in a position to wipe out any who oppose us by deed or word. And I'm going to stop right there. I got 3 minutes, and I want to say I'm really kind of glad I found this, even though I've known a lot of this this proposal here has put together by people that have a this magnificent plan for themselves, and we see a lot of and in Ford's time we see a lot of what this is saying was happening then. And I think more and more we're seeing this too in our day to day. And okay, so this calls for us, thinkers, and a lot of unity, togetherness, a lot of unity together. We've talked about that. I'm not sure. I'm just reading this for the first time. I'm not sure if this author has solutions as we go forward with this and read this whole piece here. She's got a lot of very fascinating things coming up that you will be quite amazed at. And it definitely talks about the millionaires, the Morgans, the Vanderbilts, the Astors, the whole elite, that we've been talking. And the source, again, I want to emphasize the source of this. She started this. God created the destroyer who destroys, and that's Satan. Okay, remember that was the beginning of this read, and I'm sure she'll pick up back into that a little bit as we go forward with this. I hope you back next week to find out more and where this is. So And I want to thank you so much for being here today to, unravel the mystery with me a bit here today that is so important. And I want to thank you and thank Patty, and I want to thank Colleen Haggy Shack for casting, simultaneously broadcasting. And thank you so much, and I will see you next week. And Pilamaya.
Or I can see tears. I see a choice, love or fear. What do you choose? I can see peace, or I can see war. I can see sunshine, or I can see a storm. choose my